People thought the Boraxian trade talks would be a disaster. That's what everyone told me as we got closer to their space station. Veshra, Zethia's chief diplomatic advisor, said, "Ambassador, you must understand." She was tall, graceful, and Dari with blue skin and silver markings on it. The Boraxians are one of the species in the galaxy that cares the most about rules. They have rules for everything: how you sit, how you pour drinks, and even the exact angle at which you nod your head when you say hello. Okay, I said, trying to take in all of this information. What angle should I nod at? 17 degrees for the first greeting, 23 degrees for recognizing status, 11 degrees for Veshra, I said, softly. I'll never remember all that. I can hardly remember to put my socks on the right way. She looked like she was in pain. Maybe you should just watch and let me do the actual negotiating. The queen told me to get involved. Veshra said carefully. The queen has a strange amount of faith in your methods. I couldn't disagree with that. I didn't even know why Zerthia kept putting me in these situations. The Broxian space station was huge and shiny, like a palace that had been built in space. When we docked, a group of Boraxians wearing fancy robes in every color of rainbow came to greet us. They looked like octopuses, with many tentacles and big, expressive eyes that changed colors depending on how they were feeling. The head Boraxian, whose name had about 17 syllables that I mentally shortened to Boris, started a formal greeting that lasted 10 minutes. Every word and gesture was carefully chosen. Veshra answered in the same formal way. I stood there trying to keep up, but to be honest, it all seemed like too much work. Finally, we were taken to a room where we could negotiate. There was a big table in the middle of the room and chairs that looked more like thrones around it. Servants brought in trays of snacks and set them down in a precise way that seemed like a ritual. "Now," Boris said, his tentacles arranging themselves in what I thought was a formal way, "we may begin the 73rd session of trades, negotiations between the Boraxian Commerce Guild and the entire empire." 73rd? I couldn't help but ask. "How long have you been talking?" Boris' eyes turned orange, which I thought meant to be he was angry. "Ambassador Morrison, these things need time and careful thought. You can't rush proper protocol." "Okay, sure, but what's really the issue? What do you want to agree on?" Veshra gave me a warning look, but Boris spoke up. "The disagreement is about the exchange rate for Boraxian textiles and Antari energy crystals. How to fairly tax goods that are moving through border systems, and how to get tariffs that are both fair for both sides." "Okay, those all sound like math problems. Do you just sit down and figure out the numbers?" Boris said in a stiff voice. "We have suggested 17 different ways to do the math. Each has been turned down for different reasons, based on protocol and precedent." I looked at Veshra. She nodded a little, which confirmed what I thought. They weren't stuck on the math itself. They were having trouble with the rules for talking about math. I leaned in and said, "Can I ask you something, Boris? I'm sorry if this is rude, but I'm really interested. What do you want from this trade deal?" His eyes' color changed. I had never seen before, like a deep purple. "What do I want?" "Yeah. What happens to you if this deal goes through? What gets better?" Boris' tentacles moved around a little. That is not how negotiations work. In trade economics, what you want personally doesn't matter. But you have to care about something, I said. You've been working on this for months. Why? There was a long pause. Boris then said in a low voice, my homeworld makes the best textiles in 17 systems. But our weavers had a hard time getting the energy they need to run their machines. This problem could be solved with Indari crystals, but the cost is too high and the rules are too complicated. I want to make it possible for our artisans to thrive. That's a good reason, I said warmly. Veshra, what does the Indari Empire want? She seemed uncomfortable when she was asked, but she said, the empire needs a variety of trade partners. Boraxian textiles are famous, and this route would make it possible for people from different cultures to meet and do business with each other. I said, so you both want the same thing, trade that is good for people. But you have to keep arguing about protocol. Protocol exists for a reason, Boris said, but his eyes had turned a softer blue. Negotiations get out of hand without structure. Of course, but structures can sometimes feel like a cage. I took out my tablet. How about we do something else? What if we just figure out the numbers in a way that works for both sides and then figure out how to say it in the right way later? Veshra looked shocked. Boy's eyes changed color quickly. This is very strange, Boris finally said. Yeah, but what is wrong? On my tablet, I opened a spreadsheet. Hey, I'm a mechanic. I don't worry about the right way to fix things when I do it. I fix it in a way that works. Then I write the report later. Can't we do that here? Boris said. Trade negotiations are not machinery. But he didn't sound so sure. Aren't they? You have inputs and outputs, supply and demand, cost and benefits. It's all just numbers in an equation. I began to type. Let's keep it simple. How much does it cost you to make one of your best textiles? Boris thought for a moment and then started to answer. The numbers came easily once he got going. We went back and forth, making a model of the trade relationship on my tablet. No formal language and no set positions. There are only two people trying to fix a problem. Veshra watched in silence, only speaking up now and then to give information about Andari production cost and energy surplus. Boris called in some of his advisors, and soon there was a small group of people around my tablet, all of whom were adding information. I said, so if we set the base exchange rate here, pointing to a number, and add a small tariff that goes into a joint fund for trade route maintenance, does that work for everyone? Boris looked at the screen, and his tentacles moved in a way that I had learned were meant that he was thinking. This is pretty fair. It gives our viewers stability and the entire good profit margin. Great! I saved the document. Rasha, can you put this in the right words for a trade agreement? She looked at me like I had just done something magical. You just broke a deadlock that had been going on for months in 2 hours? Did I? I looked at the numbers again. I mean, you all did the real work. I only asked questions. I hoped that Boris' bright green eyes meant he was happy. Ambassador Morrison, your way of doing things is very strange, but I think it's nice. We Boraxians take pride in following rules and procedures. Maybe we were so focused on the form that we forgot about the function. I said, that happens. When I first became a mechanic, I always followed the manual to the letter, even when I could see a faster way to do things. My mentor said that rules are not prisons, but tools. You use them when they work and find a way to get around them when they don't. Wisdom is simplicity, Boris said, nodding as if he agreed. I think your kind has a lot to teach the galaxy. Zarthia called me to her private chambers after the talk were over and went well. She was reading something on a holographic display while sitting in a chair that looked like it was made of solidified light. You have done well, Ambassador, she said without looking up. Again, I only asked questions. Help them remember what they were really trying to do. Yes, that's exactly what makes you work. She ignored the hologram and turned to look at me. Do you know why I picked you, Jake Morrison? Because I called you boss by mistake? She laughed. That was the spark, but not the reason. I've been watching people for a while now. Your kind is very young and just starting to reach for the stars. Most people in the galaxy would say you are primitive. Thanks, I said in a dry voice. But you have something that most advanced species have lost: the ability to change. You don't have to follow rules and traditions that have been around for thousands of years. You don't have any ideas about how to solve problems before you start. You care more about function than form. And most importantly, you stay true to your humanity even when things are very strange. I don't think I get it. Zarthia stood up and walked to a window where she could see the stars. As they get older, most species become stiff. They make rules and structures that work for them for a while, but eventually those structures get in the way of more growth. The Boraxians are great at trading, but their own rules almost got in the way. These Alosians were too angry about old problems to see simple solutions. And what about people? People change. A mechanic from Earth can look at alien technology and figure out how to fix it. A human negotiator can see through the complicated parts of a culture to the simple truth that lies beneath. Somehow, a person will make it work when faced with the impossible. She looked back at me. This is why I brought you here. Your species can see the past, the rules to what really matters, which is what the galaxy needs. I felt a warm feeling in my chest. That was like pride but also like duty. So what's next? Now, Zarthia smiled. Now we go back to our home world. I want you to meet someone, the Indari Empire's Grand Council. They are not sure about my choice of ambassador. You'll have to show them you're worthy. Awesome. No stress. I tried to sound sure of myself, but my voice cracked a little. She put a hand on my shoulder. Jake Morrison, you have ended a mining dispute and a trade deadlock by being honest and not making things more complicated than they need to be. Yes, the Grand Council will challenge you, but I trust that you will respond in the only way you know how, by being yourself. What if I'm not enough? Then you will teach them something they have forgotten, she said simply. That the simplest answer is sometimes the most complicated one. Sometimes the best diplomat is the one who won't play games with other diplomats. I thought about what she said as I walked out of her office, about how people can change and adapt, and how they can see through complicated things to find the truth. It sounded like a good idea and made me feel good, but mostly I was just a guy who fixed things and told the truth when I talked to people. Maybe there was a place for humans in this huge universe after all. If that was enough to bring species together and end wars in the space, even if we did wear coveralls to format talks. The Indari home planet was beautiful. It looked like a jewel floating in space from orbit, with purple clouds swirling around it, and huge oceans that glowed with bioluminescent life. The cities were made of the same crystal like material as their ships. They looked like beautiful, natural structures growing out of the ground. As our ship got closer to the capital, Veshra gave me what must have been my 100th briefing on how to act. She said, "The Grand Council has 12 members, each from a different part of the empire." Her voice was tight with stress. "They are very old, very powerful, and very traditional. You must show them the proper respect. Wait for them to acknowledge you before speaking, and never ever interrupt when." "Veshra," I said softly, "I appreciate you trying to get me ready, but we both know I'm probably going to mess up the rules anyway. Maybe we should just accept that and move on." She made a noise that would have been a laugh or a groan. "The Queen believes in you, and I'm trying to as well, Ambassador. But you need to know that the Ground Council can take away your appointment. If they think you're not fit, it could hurt Earth's relationship with the Empire. Then there's no pressure. Jake, I'm serious. They want to find any reason to turn you down. Some think humans are too primitive to represent the Earth on the galactic stage, and others think that the Queen is being impulsive. We need to show them they're wrong." I thought about what Zerthia had said as I looked out the window at the city coming closer, about how humans can change, about being able to see the truth through the noise. I asked, "What do they really care about? The people on the council? What do they care about?" Vishwa thought about this. "They care about the empire's stability and growth, keeping the balance of power that has kept the peace for 3,000 years, and upholding traditional and honor. So they want to keep things running smoothly and protect their people?" "Yes, I guess that's what it is at its core." "That's what I'll talk about," I said. "No politics or protocol, just about keeping things running and protecting what matters." Her golden eyes looked at me with something like hope. That could really work. The council chamber was huge, and the ceiling was so high that I couldn't see the top. There were 12 thrones in a circle, and each one was filled by an Andari who seemed to radiate power just by being there. I had learned that the intricate markings on their skin showed their age and status. These were the oldest and most respected people in their whole civilization. Zathia sat on a throne that was little higher than the others. She wore her crown and formal robes. She looked like a queen and was far away, not at all like the person who laughed at my jokes yesterday. I walked to the middle of the circle, very aware of how plain my clothes were. I had agreed to wear clean pants and a nice shirt, but I had turned down the fancy robes they had offered me. At the very least, I should look human if I was going to represent all of the humanity. "Grand Council," Sarthia said in a formal voice. "I present Ambassador Jake Morrison of Earth, who represents humanity in the affairs of entire empire." The first person to speak was an old man with silver markings on his skin, who was a member of the council. "This is the person you chose? A mechanic?" "Yes, Elder Corvax," Zerthia said. "Already he has shown his worth by—" Another council member interrupted, saying, "We have read the reports." A woman with markings that looked like they were moving and changing. "The Xylos situation? The Boraxian trade agreement. We have to admit that the results are impressive, but they were achieved through luck, not skill." "With respect," I said, and everyone looked at me. "That's enough of waiting to be recognized. Luck only gets you so far. I've been a mechanic for 15 years. Do you know what I've learned? Most of the time, problems that seem hard are really just problems that people have made hard." Elder Corvac's eyes narrowed. "Do you really think that galactic diplomacy is easy?" "No, sir. What I'm saying is that most conflicts come down to simple things. People want to protect what they care about, be heard, and be treated fairly. I took a deep breath to calm down. These Alosians were fighting over an asteroid field, but the real reason that they were fighting was that they didn't trust each other. If they could fix that, the asteroid problem would go away. And what about the Boraxians? Asked another member of the council. Do you really think that centuries of trade rules are just too much? Not unnecessary, I said. Maybe not the best place to start. When I fix a complicated machine, I don't read the whole manual first. I find the problem, the broken part, fix it, and then worry about the documentation. The Boraxians knew what they wanted. They just needed permission to say it out loud without all the formal languages getting in the way. The woman on the council, who had spoken before, leaned forward. You talk about getting rid of structure and tradition. These things are important. They've kept the empire stable for thousands of years. I didn't say to throw them away. I said, I'm saying that sometimes you need to look past them to remember why they are there in the first place. Rules are meant to help people, not trap them. Elder Corvax said coldly, That's a naive view. You've done well in two small situations. That doesn't mean you can speak for everyone in your species. You're right, I said, and I saw the council members look shocked. I'm not qualified, not in the usual way. I don't know your rules. I can't say half the titles I'm supposed to use. I get the formal greetings wrong every single time. Why are we wasting our time then? Another council member asked. Maybe that's the point, I said, trying to figure out what to say. Earth is new to all of this. We're the species that doesn't know the rules yet. Maybe that gives us a point of view that you've lost. We see problems in a new way, without 300 years of rules telling us what to do. Serthia said something. Ambassador Morrison makes a good point. The galaxy is changing. New species are joining the interstellar community, and all alliances are changing. Maybe the old way of doing diplomacy isn't enough for these new problems. Or maybe, Elder Korvac said sharply, you're just tired of tradition and are using this person as an excuse to break up something that has worked for so long. It felt like the room got colder. It seems that saying the queen did something out of boredom was a big deal. But Zathia didn't seem mad. She had a thoughtful look on her face. Let's put the theory to the test, she said. Elder Corvax, you talked about the Dracon Confederacy, the terrestrial dispute that has been stuck for 6 months. Please give Ambassador Morrison the briefing so he can try to find a solution. That's crazy, Corvax said. That situation is too complicated to understand with problems going back. Then he will fail, Sathya said smoothly, and you will have proof that my faith in him is misplaced. Or he will succeed, and maybe we will all learn something useful. The members of the council looked at one another. Finally, Corvax nodded stiffly. That's fine. But if he fails, we'll talk about the Earth's role in this empire again. Okay, Zathia said. I saw worry in her eyes for a split second when she looked at me. Then she was distant and royal again. Ambassador Morrison, you will have access to all relevant files. You have 3 days to propose a solution. The council will reconvene to hear your recommendation. 3 days? I tried not to sound scared. For a 6-month standstill? Elder Korvac said. That seems more than generous, with what could have been a smile. When I left the council chamber with Veshra, she was shaking her head. 3 days. That's impossible. The Dracon situation has terrestrial claims, resource rights, religious sites, and about 15 other things that make it more complicated. Then we should get going, I said, trying to sound more sure of myself than I was. Where can I find the files? The next 3 days were the hardest I've ever had. I read until my eyes hurt. The Indari Empire and the Dracon Confederacy have been around for hundreds of years. Disputes over borders, trade problems, cultural misunderstandings that had grown into serious complaints. The current crisis was all about a system called Theta 7. It was claimed by both sides. The Indari said that it had been theirs for 600 years. The Dracons said that their ancestors had lived there first. But they had to leave because of a war of thousands years ago. They said they had the right to take it back. Both sides had good points. Legal precedents, documents from the past, passionate calls for honor and justice. I read everything and took a lot of notes, but I felt more lost as time went on. Zethia came to see me in my room on the second day. Holographic displays of maps, timelines, and legal documents were all around me. She asked, "How is your preparation going?" "Honestly, I have no idea how to solve this." I rubbed my tired eyes. "Both sides are right, but in different ways. How do you choose?" "Our best diplomats have been trying to figure that out for months." "What would you do?" I asked. "If you had to pick?" She gave it some thought. "I would rule in favor of the Indari claim. We've owned that land for hundreds of years. Practical concerns must come before ancient history." "But that's not right for the Dracon." "Yes," she said. "But fairness and practicality don't always go hand in hand." I looked back at the displays and all the information. Then I thought of something. Can I talk to them? To who? Both sides. The real people who are in this disagreement, not their lawyers or diplomats. The people who live in the system that are in dispute. The ones who will be affected by whatever decision is made. Zathia smiled. "That's very strange. People don't talk about negotiations like this in private. They go through official channels. But can I? You are the ambassador. You can ask for anything you want." She got up. "I'll take care of it." On the third day, I was in a communication room, talking to leaders from both the sides of the conflict through a hologram. Commander Thrak of the Indari border fleet was on the screen. He was a stern military officer who looked like he had been carved from stone. On the other side was Speaker Lyris of the Dracon Confederacy, a woman with scales that changed colors from green to gold. I began by saying, "Thank you both for agreeing to talk to me. I know this has been going for a while." "6 months of pointless talks," Thrak said in a rough voice. "While ships patrol the area in question and tensions rise," Laris said. "1,000 years of unfairness. War drove our people out of Theta 7. We have the right to go back." "I've read about the past," I said. "And I've read all the legal arguments. You're both right, but in different ways. But I want to ask a different question. What do you really want? Not what the law says you should want, but what would really make things better for your people?" Both of them looked shocked. Thrak said slowly, "I want safety for Andari settlers in Theta 7. They've lived there for generations. They're loyal, imperial citizens. They shouldn't have to leave their homes. I want my people to be able to go to the holy places where our ancestors are buried," Laris said. "To know that we haven't completely forgotten about them. To bring back some connection to our heritage." "Okay," I said, and an idea came to me. Instead of arguing about who knows the system, why don't we talk about how you can share it? "Share it?" Thrak looked hurt. That system is in Indari territory. Lyra shot back. It was Dracon territory first. Okay, but arguing about who owns what hasn't gotten us anywhere in 6 months. What if the system stays officially Endari, but the Dracon got guaranteed access to the scared sites? And maybe some other perks, like being able to trade first or something? The Dracon would never agree, Thrak said. Maybe, Laris said, her scales changing to a thoughtful blue. If the access was real, if we could keep the sites up, go there whenever we wanted, and make sure our ancestors were honored. And if the Dracon presence was limited to the sacred sites, Thrak said carefully, not expanding into the settled region, then perhaps it would work. Lyra said, it would take trust. Trust has to be built, Thrak agreed. Maybe by sharing the responsibility for keeping the sacred sites safe. I leaned back and watched them talk. They were really negotiating now. Not just repeating what the law said. Sometimes all people needed was to be given the go-ahead to talk about what they really cared about instead of what they thought they should care about. They had the outline of an agreement. By the end of the talk, not ideal, but doable, and a deal that took into account both the present situation and the past wrong. When I showed this to the Grand Council the next day, everyone was speechless. You did it, Veshra whispered next to me. You really did it. They fixed it, I said. I only asked them questions. Slowly, Elder Corvax got up from his throne. This is okay. More than okay. You did what our diplomats couldn't do in 6 months in 3 days. Honestly, I didn't know enough about the law to argue, I said. I just talked to them like they were people. Another council member, who hadn't said anything before, laughed. It was a nice sound. Maybe that's exactly what we needed. We had forgotten that there are real people with real problems behind every terrestrial dispute. Zarthia got up from her throne, and her smile was bright. Does the Grand Council agree that Ambassador Morrison is Earth's representative? They all nodded one by one, even Elder Corvax, who looked like it hurt him. Very well, Zarthia said. Let it be known that Ambassador Jake Morrison represents humanity in the affairs of the entire empire. After the formal meeting, Elder Corvax came up to me and said, I was wrong about you, human. You are not sophisticated in the way we think of it. But maybe that's not what we need. Maybe the most advanced solution is to remember the simple truths we've made too complicated. I believe there is room for both, I said. Your rules and traditions are there for a reason. But it might be helpful to have someone who doesn't know all those reasons ask why and what if every now and then. He slowly nodded. Maybe, Ambassador Morrison, how does a mechanic get so smart about people? I said. Mechanics breaks for a simple reason. A loose connection, a worn part, or something out of alignment. People aren't that different. Usually, when something wrong, it's because of simple things like misunderstanding, fear, or pride. Fix the simple thing, and the complex problem often fixes itself, he said. Diplomacy defined? Not by adding new complexity, but by remembering how simple things used to be. Your species will be a fun addition to the galactic community, Ambassador. Satya came up to me as he walked away. Good job, Morrison. I was scared the whole time. That's what made you perfect. You faced an impossible situation with humility and curiosity instead of confidence and assumption. She pointed out the stars outside the window. This is only the beginning. The Empire has thousands of worlds, hundreds of species, and countless situations that could use your unique point of view. Don't worry about it, right? She laughed, and for a moment, she was just Zarthia, not the eternal sovereign. Oh, there will be pressure. This will be crisis, fights, and times when you question everything. But I believe in you, Jake Morrison. You've already shown that sometimes the best way to solve a problem is to care about the people involved and ask them what they need. I looked out the strange city where the crystal spires got the light of an alien sun and thought about how far I'd come from being a mechanic in Nevada. I thought about how these Alosians could learn to work together, how the Baraxians and Andari could find fair trade, and how the Drakon and Andari could share sacred places. I guess I couldn't change the galaxy, but I might be able to help people remember how to talk to each other, how to look beyond the complicated parts and see what really mattered. And maybe that was all they needed. That might have been exactly what an accidental ambassador in coveralls was meant to do. It had been 6 months since I became ambassador, and life had settled into a strange new routine. It was strange because my office was a diplomatic suite on an alien flag ship that was moving between star systems. Weird because my job included everything from fixing hyperdrives to making peace treaties. It was strange because I was living a life I never thought I would, but it felt good. I was in my room, video calling my sister back on Earth. She still lived in our hometown, worked as a teacher, and was the only person who could keep me from going crazy. So let's get this straight, Sarah said, laughing at me through the screen. You got two alien warlords to agree to a ceasefire over drinks? I said. It was more complicated than that. There was a whole fight over mining rights, and you really did tell me that you got along over fizzy drinks. Okay, yes. But the drinks led to a conversation that led to understanding, that led to my brother, the diplomat, solving galactic conflicts with soda. She had a big smile on her face. Mom would be so happy and so lost. I smiled back because I felt that same mix of happiness and sadness. 3 years ago, before any of this happened, our mom died. I wish she could see how her mechanic's son, had changed. How's Mr. Whiskers? Fat and spoiled, I said, changing the subject. He still sits by your chair every night like he's waiting for you. Sarah's face softened. When are you coming back home, Jake? Even for a visit? I don't know. Things are hectic. There is always another problem or crisis that needs to be dealt with. I thought about it. Sometimes I feel bad. It feels like I'm leaving Earth behind while I play ambassador to aliens. Are you kidding? Sarah's voice got angry. Jake, you're out there for all of us. When you help solve a problem or make friends with a new species, you're showing them what people can do. That's not leaving Earth behind. That's giving the universe a voice for Earth. Veshra showed up at my door before I could answer. Ambassador, the Queen wants to see you right away. There is a problem. I said goodbye to Sarah and ran to the command center. Zarthia was in front of a huge holographic display that showed a star system I had never seen before. Several other Andari officers stood around her, looking serious. What's going on? Zarthia said. The Galwar Collective has officially asked to join the Indari Empire. This is something to be happy about. But there is a problem. She pointed, and the screen zoomed in on a specific planet. The home planet of the Galwar. There are 6 billion people living there. They want to join the empire so that we can protect them and help them trade. That sounds good. What is the problem? The Kalwar have a caste system that rules them. The upper caste have all the power and resources. People in the lower caste are basically slaves. Her golden eyes met mine. The Grand Council is split. Some say we should let them in and try to change their system from the inside. Some people say we can't work with a civilization that has slavery. My stomach dropped. And they want to know what I think? You are the ambassador. You can see through the noise to the truth. The council values your opinion. She turned off the screen. I took a deep breath and thought carefully about what they said. Can I talk to them? The Kalwar, both the leaders and some of the lower caste people? That's not normal, but yes, then that's what I have to do. I can't say what I think about people I haven't met. I was on the Kalwar homeworld 3 days later. The sights on this beautiful planet rose in graceful spirals toward the sky. But there was a dark side to the beauty. The lower caste lived in the underground warrens and worked in the factories and mines that made life easier for the upper caste. I made sure to see both sides of the world, the bright towers and the dark tunnels below. I met Lord Kevrin, one of the leaders of the Kalwar in the towers. He was tall and graceful, with scales that changed colors and a voice that sounded like music. His quarters were more luxurious than anything I'd ever seen. Ambassador Morrison, he said warmly, we are grateful for your visit. The Indari Empire is famous, and joining such a civilization would be the best thing that could happen to my people. Tell me about your people, I said. All of them. Of course. The Kelvar are an old species with a long history of, I mean, all of them. The ones that live in the towers and the ones that live in the tunnels. His face got a little less angry. Oh, you talk about the worker caste? They play an important role in our society. I said, they're slaves. They are given purpose and care, food, shelter, and work that gives their lives purpose. They would be lost without the structure we give them. Have you asked them if they feel lost? The scales on the Lord Kelvin's body turned darker. You don't get our culture, Ambassador. This system has been around for thousands of years. It comes naturally to us. Many cultures have had slavery. I said, that doesn't make it okay. For hundreds of years, there was slavery on my planet. We are ashamed of what we did back then. Then maybe your world was different. Maybe your lower classes were able to govern themselves, not ours. I got up. I want to meet some of them, if that's okay. He clearly didn't want to agree, but he was too polite to say no. Do as you wish. I met Mara and her family in the tunnels below. They lived in a small room carved out of rock that was barely big enough for 4 people to sleep in. Mara spent 16 hours a day working in a crystal mine. When her kids grew up, they would go there with her. What would you do if you were free? I asked. She seemed confused. Free? If you could pick your own life, what do you want? I've never thought about things like that. But then her eyes, which were dark and deep like wells, suddenly turned to me with great intensity. I want my kids to learn, to read, and learn about the world outside of these tunnels, to pick their own paths. And if you could choose your own path, I would like to see the sky, she said softly. I was born in these tunnels. I've never seen the sky. I spent hours in those tunnels, talking to a lot of lower caste Kalwar. When they were allowed to speak freely, each and every one of them talked about dreams and desires that went beyond their jobs. They weren't simple or able to do things. They were people who had been systematically oppressed and told they were less than others until many of them believed it. I knew what I had to say when I got back to the Indari ship. The Grand Council got together to listen to my report. I stood in the middle of their circle, thinking about Mara, who had never seen the sky, and the Lord Gavrin, who really thought his people needed to be ruled. I also thought about how injustice could look like order in so many ways. The Kilwar want to join the empire, I said. Their leaders think it's a way to make their people richer and safer. They can give us resources and a good strategic position and a chance to learn about their culture. Most people would say that accepting them would be good for the empire. But Elder Korvax asked, but we would be supporting slavery. We would be telling 6 billion people that it's okay for them to suffer as long as it helps us. We would be saying that some lives are more important than others because of how they were born. One council member said, the Galwar culture is very old. Who are we to ask them to change? We're not asking for anything, I said. We're making rules about who we will work with. We're telling you that if you want to be a part of this empire, you need to believe in certain things. One of those values should be that everyone has the right to be free and make their own decisions. And what if the Kalwa say no? Asked another council member. Then they don't join. That's all there it is. I looked at Zaithia. I know this isn't the complicated diplomatic answer you are probably looking for, but sometimes the simple answer is the right one, even when it's hard. The council talked about it for hours. I stood outside with Veshra, pacing back and forth nervously. You took a strong position, she said, more daring than most ambassadors would be. I met Mara, I said softly. Veshra, she's never seen the sky. She has spent her whole life in the dark, mining crystals so that the upper caste can live in style. How could I suggest that we work with a system that does that to people? Some people would say that the alliance's greater good weighs one woman's pain. Those people would be wrong. She gave a small smile. Yes, yes, they would. Lastly, the council called me back. Zethia stood up. The Grand Council has made a choice. We will make an offer to the Kelvar collective, but there will be some conditions. They need to start breaking down their caste system within 10 standard years. They must give all Kelvar freedom and equal rights. We will help with this change and give you the tools you need, but we won't back down on this requirement. I felt a wave of relief wash over me. Thank you, Elder Korvac said. You gave us moral clarity, Ambassador Morrison, something we didn't have in our calculations of risk and benefit. You made us remember that an empire built on justice should never work with injustice, no matter what it cost. It was clear that Lord Gavrin was not happy with the situation, but he was also practical. There were too many benefits to being a member of the empire to say no. He said he would start the process of change. I went back to the tunnels one last time before I left the Kelwar home world. I found Mara and told her what we had decided. Free? She said quietly. We will be free. It will take time, years, but yes, you and your kids will be able to choose how to live your lives. She started to cry. I don't know how to thank you. Thank me? By living well, I said. By telling your kids that they can be anything they want to be by looking at the sky. Zathia joined me at the observation window as our ship left the orbit Kelvar. She asked, do you know what you did? You have set a standard. Now every species that wants to join the empire will be judged not only on how useful they are strategically, but also on how well they fit in morally. You've made it harder for the empire to make decisions. Is that bad? No, it is important. That's right. She stared at the stars. I picked you because I thought people could bring something good to the galaxy. You have shown me that I was right over and over again, not because of great strategy or expert negotiation, but because of clear morals. By caring about the Maras in the universe, I asked, what happens now? I mean, for a long time. I can't keep doing this. Earth will need a real diplomat one day. Jake Morrison, you are a real diplomat. Maybe the most real one the galaxy has ever seen. But you are right that this can't last forever. There will be more people one day. People who know how to handle galactic matters and know the rules in politics. But they will have to remember what you taught us. What have I taught you? That the most advanced diplomacy is knowing that behind every position and argument are the real people with hopes, fears, and dreams. That the simplest answer is sometimes the most elegant one. That rules and customs are not prisons but tools. That caring is more important than being smart. I thought about the last 6 months. The fights were over, the friends I'd made, and the small changes I had been able to make. I thought about Mara, who would finally be able to see the sky, about how the Zylocians work together, about how the Boraxians and Andari trade fairly, the Dracon honor their ancestors. I'm just a mechanic, I said softly. You're an ambassador, Sathya said. One who knows that civilizations like machines work best. All their parts are properly aligned and treated with care. Someone who knows that you don't just work around something that's broken, you fix it. She was correct. I'd been doing the same job all along in a way, finding what was wrong and fixing it. The scale had just grown. So, what's next? I asked. What's next? We have been invited to the Centauri conference. 300 species coming together to talk about trade, safety, and working together. It will be crazy, full of arguments, and very important for the stability of the galaxy. And you're bringing me? Of course. Someone needs to ask the easy questions that no one else is smart enough to ask. She grinned. I've also heard that the conference will have a mechanical exhibition. I thought you might like to see how other animals build things. I laughed. Now you're talking my language. That's what I do best, Ambassador. Talk in your own language, and by doing this, they help translate the gifts of the humanity to the rest of the galaxy. I took out my tablet and opened a message to Sarah as we jumped into hyperspace and raced towards new challenges and chances. You asked me when I'm coming home? I wrote. I don't know yet, but I want you to know that every time I help someone here, every time I settle a disagreement or make a new friend, I take it home with me. I'm showing them the best part of people, like the ones that care about fairness, freedom, and fixing things that are broken. In a way, this is my home. I'm taking Earth with me to every part of the galaxy, and I believe that's exactly where it should be. I love you. Please give Mr. Whiskers a scratch behind the ears. I sent the message and looked out at the stars flying by us in hyperspace. There was a conference full of aliens with hard problems somewhere out there. There were people out there who needed someone to ask them simple questions and care about simple truths. I had accidentally walked into the future, which needed a mechanic turned ambassador, a person who didn't know enough to make things complicated, and someone who still thought that caring about the people it affected was the best way to fix things. The galaxy was huge, weird, and full of amazing things and problems that I was trying to figure out. But I didn't have to know everything. I just had to keep being myself, asking questions, fixing things that were broken, and caring about people no matter how many tentacles they had or what color their skin was. I was Jake Morrison, the accidental ambassador, the mechanic who never stopped working, and the person who spoke for Earth to the stars. And somehow, against all the odds, that was enough. The trip had just begun.